Ryan.
Hey, Ben.
Welcome to episode 29 of the LEAFline Podcasts.
Lucky number 29. Hi, everyone. I'm back.
Just like my age
Hello.
for the last 11 years, huh?
Whatever,
Sorry.
weirdo. Hey, welcome back. Or, no, welcome
I should be saying that
all
to
of you. Hey.
Welcome back to you, sir.
Yes, indeed. Hey, thank you to all of you who listened last week with the much better co-host for Ben Aquina named Kristen Aquina, and it was just a great episode, so I thank Ben and Kristen for doing that. And I'll have to take more trips because that was just great.
I'll tell you that Kristen is very relieved that you are back from North Carolina by way of Pennsylvania because she hated doing it.
But hey, everyone, thank you so much for joining us. Glad you're back. Glad I'm back. Whatever. I'm so confused.
This
but that's
podcast
okay.
might feel like a one-way conversation sometimes, but we'd love to hear from you, anything that you think. So if you have thoughts for us, you can send them to centenary1911@gmail.com.
Can I get an update?
Welcome to Updates. So, updates. Last week we had several on-campus activities that were a joy to see the church family attending. We did a movie night on Thursday, a family movie night. We watched a movie called The Secret Life of Pets. It was just delightful. The movie was fine, but just seeing all the people there. My kid ate 2 bags of popcorn. He loved it. He had the most obnoxious fake laugh that he kept doing every time there was a bit of slapstick on screen. And yeah. So there was that.
That was a pretty good crowd, too, from what I hear. Carefully socially distanced and protocols in place, but a good turnout. And I hear there was a really great check-in person who was helping people when they arrived to...
No, it was Kathy.
What a slam. And
Yeah.
it was Friday night, just so you know. Ben mentioned Thursday night, but it was Friday night. So
I did, didn't I?
you
Sorry.
did.
Yeah.
That's okay. So it was great. And Ben also participated and led and organized and did a whole lot of work for Sky Songs, which was the Sunday evening gathering.
It was a modern worship experience on the grass Sunday evening. It was wonderful I was really happy to see the people that were there, and we're going to be doing more of those. And by the way, in all of these things, the church leadership is very interested in you, the congregants' feelings about them, what you're excited about, what you're not excited about, even feedback and nitpicking, like anything that we know about the way our church family is receiving and experiencing these things helps us because we don't have that data. We don't live inside your heads, but if you email us, then we know, and it's good.
And if you're unable to attend those events, then send us your doctor's note as to why you didn't, and we need your explanation. No, I'm just kidding. But if you heard things and you would like to attend such things in the future, please let us know that as well, because that helps us as well plan and prepare.
And one of those things you can RSVP for is a hymn sing on the grass on October 25th, 5:30 p.m. in the evening. It really helps us if you email ahead of time. But that evening will be led not by myself, but by, I believe, Jenner will be there, and Jennifer will be there leading hymns on the grass on October 25th, 5:30 p.m. You can show up as early as 15 or 20 minutes beforehand to find your spot. Make sure you bring your blanket or chair to sit on, and thank you for wearing a mask for that, but we'd love to see you there for that one, too. And on October 31st, we are planning a Halloween carnival walkthrough. This is an event that we, the leadership, got together. We started figuring some stuff out, and it's going to be socially distanced. The games are going to be planned with the intent in mind of not having people touch the same objects over and over. We're being very careful with it, and we need help for this. Candy donations are going to be needed because we're going to be giving away a lot of candy. We'd love to have volunteers that want to be friendly and interact with the community. If you've got kids or grandkids in your life and you want to bring them to attend this thing, that's fantastic. But our goal with this is always to be as more of an outreach from Centenary Church, us all as Centenary Church, to bless the community, especially the students of Standiford Elementary. So we'd love to have your involvement in that.
Interruption.
I do have to add one thing to our updates section. Stanislaus County has indeed moved into the red tier of COVID lockdown, whatever you want to call it. A lot of churches will be allowed to open this weekend. We have had confirmation that Centenary will not be allowed to open this weekend, but we are working really hard to make sure that we are going to be allowed to open for in-person attendance on Sunday, October 25th. So look forward to October 25th. In addition to the hymn sing that evening, we do intend to have a church service that very morning. But we will not be open on October 18th.
Recommendations. Give it a try.
Recommendations.
Ben, what you been watching, what you been recommending, what you been doing?
Well, once again, we are having trouble advancing through the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And Kristen and I talked about this because Civil War is a movie where all these heroes that we've been enjoying their teamwork over several years have this big divisive split, hence the name. And it gets to a point where it's much, much less fun. And so we've been finding other things to occupy our time. We finished the Pride and Prejudice, which was wonderful. But on Disney Plus last week, I was scanning through titles and I saw the movie Big Business from 1988. Brian, do you remember this?
Vaguely.
Bette Midler and Lily Tomlin each play a set of twins, and each pair of twins was separated at birth and paired off with the wrong sister. And it's a comedy of errors of sort, of mistaken identities, and it's really, really funny. I loved it when I was a kid. I didn't understand how well written and constructed it was when I was a kid. I love the art of screenwriting, and I always find it fascinating when a screenwriter can just arrange things in the right way. So Big Business was really fun. Not a whole lot of profanity or anything much like that. It's a very PG kind of PG from what I could tell. So, yeah, that was really fun. Big Business. I watched that. I'm still reading On the Edge of the Dark Sea of Darkness. And Brian, what you been reading? What you been watching?
Brave you. So, as you know, I've been gone, had a little trip. And so what I've been watching was regular television with my father because he doesn't believe in machines. So he has no Netflix or anything else. He just has cable and, so regular TV has commercials. I don't know if you know that, but it's obnoxious how much I'm sick of commercials and how I didn't miss them at all for all these years.
Can't skip them after 4 seconds anymore.
Yeah, Kathy and I don't have TV. We don't have regular satellite or cable or any of that stuff because we just cut the cord a while back. But my father, so watching sports was interesting because I haven't done that this year yet either. And watching network TV and things like the History Channel, which I used to love, and now I hate because the History Channel is no longer history. It's just some obnoxious reality network.
History made every day.
Yes, exactly. Annoying. So, I have nothing to recommend, and what I've been watching is not worth recommending or even talking about anymore. What I've been reading, again, I'm in my weird, I like to listen to books I've already read. So I went through the 3 books that are part of the Graham Simpson is his name. So he wrote the Rosie Project, and I read 3 of them again because they were enjoyable audiobooks. And so it's just a quirky story that I really enjoy. So I listened to that on vacation, and a bunch of podcasts that I've already talked about and a bunch of stuff I've already listened to, but I enjoyed it. And my history books, of course, with Stephen Ambrose and a couple other historians that I've read. Those were very enjoyable on my break as well.
So that's what you've been partaking of. Do you have any direct recommendations? Any give it a tries this week?
No. How about that? I got nothing to recommend today. So I recommend you take a break and clear your head and try to get some space in your life to do
like
that.
Going to North Carolina?
A staycation, if that's what you can do, or just some rest, or get away, because that's always good too. So that's what I recommend, but that's nothing to do with what I've been reading or watching. So,
I do have an actual give it a try this week. When I was talking with Pastor Tim and Miss Gina about what movie we could use for the thing, and they had some titles, they hadn't seen them before, they didn't know how bad they were, and I said, well, just check IMDb. And they were kind of like, IMDb, isn't that where you find out when you watch a movie, hey, what was that guy in before? And you find out, and I said, yes, but there's another feature on there. And I thought if they don't know about this feature, maybe some of our listeners don't either. There's a parent's guide on almost every entry on the IMDb, every movie, almost every episode of every TV show. And the great thing about these, I've seen some faith-based content studies where I want to go to whatwouljesuswatch.com and find out if I should watch this movie with my kids, or if there's a lot of these kind of online resources about the content in movies make value-based judgments about it. And that's what I love about IMDb. It just gives very basic descriptions of the content of the movie, organized by profanity. There's 7 S words and 13 P words. According to nudity and sexual situations, it'll just say, a man's buttocks are seen from the back, with no value-based judgments. By the way, that was probably a Kevin Costner movie, Brian. And it'll also, it gets very, very specific without making any value-based judgments. So you really know not just does this other person think I should let my kids watch it, but if this is the content in the movie, how do I feel about my kids watching it? So that's the IMDb Parent Guide. You can scroll down to pretty much where it gives the rating of the movie, and then right in there'll be a link for the Parent's Guide.
And there'll be a link to that with the show notes?
No, because it's on every page of IMDb.
Oh, okay, cool.
And if you've never been to IMDb, imdb.com, it's wonderful.
It's a pretty cool resource, actually.
So if you've ever watched that movie and said, oh my gosh, what have I seen that guy in? You just look it up. Oh my gosh, I saw that guy in Big Business with Lily Tomlin and Bette Midler.
Fancy that. 2 references in one little podcast.
I'm thirsty. Let's raise a glass.
Raise a glass.
Raise a glass to times past.
Would you like to go first, or
you
shall
go
I?
first, please?
Okay, so I had one plan for this week. I'm going to postpone that to next week because something happened a few days ago. I was doing a grocery run to Trader Joe's and then to Save Mart. I bought my groceries at Trader Joe's. I got to Save Mart. I got my new groceries. I got in line and could not find my debit card.
Uh-oh.
So I went back around the store, retraced my steps, couldn't find it. I put all my groceries back. And then I drove back to Trader Joe's. I checked in with their customer service window. They had not found it. I went back to Save Mart, now completely bereft of hope. So this week I am raising a glass to the Good Samaritan who found my debit card at Save Mart and turned it into management.
Wow,
So
that's
here,
awesome.
here, clink, clink. I appreciate you, sir.
Yay!
Or ma'am.
Or whoever it was. That's really cool. That's great. I actually raise a glass to those that help me travel. So as weird as it sounds, I have flown quite frequently, but this trip especially, I was noticing the assistance people at airports and the flight attendants and all those kind of folks, and not to mention the crazy friends who drive me to the airport. A lot of people helped me to do this, and it was great, and it was very appreciative. And what I noticed also, the assistance people, like many workers nowadays, are under a lot of stress because there are less
Go
of them.
figure.
Yeah, so one of my plane changes, there was one assistance person helping two people in wheelchairs and me. So this one dude had three people he was helping, pushing two wheelchairs and me with his holding his elbow as we walked through the airport. And he explained to me, because I thanked him and the people in the wheelchairs thanked him too. And he said, well, you're all going to the same flight. And also, if I come back, do you want help you one at a time? You're going to miss the flight. And number two, if I call for assistance from some other person, it's not going to work because there aren't enough assistance people available. That's just the way it is. In the pandemic, resources have been cut back, and that's one of them that got cut. So just simple. I know that's weird to even talk about, but
It just sounds like a scene out of a Gene Wilder movie.
Yes, it felt weirdly comedic as people looked at us and just kind of were like, "What?" Like some poor guys
Rubik's
pushing
cube of humanity rolling down the tarmac.
Yes, we definitely took up a lot of space between Rory, me, two people in wheelchairs, and the helper dude.
Awesome.
And so it was pretty funny, but he was great. And so raise a glass to all those who help in such situations, because I couldn't do it without all those helpers.
Hear, hear.
Why did I just get Southern? I don't know.
Trivia.
Okay, we are moving on to trivia. Before we actually get to the content, I do need to point out that Carrie Sampson last week also got the Andrew Lloyd Webber answer correct. I just didn't see her email in time. It was good to hear from Carrie Sampson again, one of our oft-time contributors. And the trivia category is Golden Boy Ralston.
Indeed.
We had one person who answered these and got all three of them correct. Unfortunately, that person is sitting across the room from me. So let's
Only
go through those
one
answers.
person responded?
I think Brian is very affronted. He's
very
more
offended.
annoyed than the Andrew Lloyd Webber goose egg from a few weeks ago.
Several in a row now. Y'all were letting us down with the trivia, but
Well, they got the Dennis Eckersley question last week.
that's true, I
Okay.
guess. Whatever.
So, question number one about the category Golden Boy Ralston. For years, Brian has been attempting to extend his birthday celebration from a single day to what length of time?
a year. No, that's not the actual
Brian
answer.
has been referring to it as his birth month celebration,
I have indeed.
and that was a long-term goal. He met it, and now he's aiming even higher.
Well, it is more than a birthday, just so you know. Everyone should be like that.
It's an
not
event
just
and an
me.
experience.
It should be everybody. Birthdays are meant to be celebrated a lot, and I've obnoxiously milked that as much as I could, much to the despair of my friends and family. So, yeah.
Question number two. What is Brian's nickname for his home state of Pennsylvania, sir?
God's country.
That is correct. Question number three. Brian once convinced a member of one of his Bible studies that the Apostle Paul had a dog. What was that dog's name?
Mudicus. And in my own defense...
With two T's, not a D.
Yeah,
Mutticus.
Mutticus.
Yeah.
And in my own defense, I didn't actually think I was convincing them of such a fact. I put it on a handout as a joke. And I thought to myself, everyone will know it's a joke, and they will chuckle wryly as they think of that Brian guy and realize that 3 Timothy doesn't exist. And
You didn't think anybody would look at that and say, wow, that sounds like a real thing.
So I learned as a young pastor pup way back then that I shouldn't do that. I shouldn't joke in writing in a
You have
Bible
power in
study
your words.
handout, because words have power, and there were some sweet souls in the room who were very disappointed to go to 3 Timothy and couldn't find it and wanted to read about Paul's dog, and were very upset with me that I had obviously put a typo, or I had a typo, because they couldn't find that Bible reference. And they really wanted to read about Paul's dog, and they didn't really get the reference to Mutticus as a humor point. So yes, sadly that taught me a lot, but it also makes me laugh even 19 years later. So, yeah. But thank you for that, Ben. That was fun.
Sure.
I got all the answers. I'm
Yes, you
so
did.
excited. And I appreciate that weird.
And this is funny. You told me your dad only got 2 out of 3.
Yes, my dad, I made him listen to it because I thought it was amusing. And so he misheard the second question and thought it was referring to one of my nicknames. So he jumped in with 3 or 4 of my nicknames, all obscene. Obviously, it's my dad. No, just kidding. Bry Guy and Byron and things like that. And he misheard. And yeah, so he got number 2 wrong. And that's kind of a fun thing too. So, but thank you for that. That was fun.
Sure.
I like getting 100% on trivia. It never happens because, you know.
Well, let's see if you can get this trivia question. In the theme of famous dogs, this category is TV dogs. Question: on the beloved animated sitcom The Jetsons, what catchphrase did Astro the dog use to describe how he felt about his owner? For bonus points, please spell your answer as Astro pronounced it. You can send that to centenary1911@gmail.com.
Does not involve Scooby Snacks. Different cartoon dog.
Story time, cause the lockdown is boring.
Oh, we're on to stories now.
Ben has hijacked the story time, which
I
normally
have,
is my
even
turf,
though I'm sure
but-
Brian has many tales from his travels.
Whatever.
Something
Lame.
happened while he was gone that I need to bring him up to speed. Actually, it's 2 stories.
2 stories.
The first one starts several months ago. I received a parcel at my house, and it was very interesting because it was from England.
Ah, yes. I
And
vaguely
it
remember
was
this.
sent to someone who I didn't know in England and returned to sender to my home address. And the sender said it was called Fresh Fits. So I figured it was some sort of an Etsy, like, online store thing. They had tried to send this package to England. It had been returned unopened. It was about the size of like 2 phone books stacked up. And
What's
I
a
decided,
phone book, dude?
a good point. I decided to take it back. I was going to work that day. I was leaving, and I took it to my office, and I thought, when I get to my desk, I can do some Google searches, find this company, get them their goods so that they can explain it to their customer. I can look up the customer. I tried all of these things. I could not find any evidence of a Fresh Fits company operating out of Modesto. I could not find any I couldn't find a contact info for the. I found a Google result for the person that it was being sent to at that town in England. I couldn't contact them. I tried contacting the post office to see if they could take the package off my hands, because I try to be an honest guy in general, you know. But I'm also really lazy and forgetful, so that's just been sitting on my desk for months now.
Excuse me, lazy. You went to all that effort already, so I wouldn't call
Well, I
that
tried.
lazy. But you did make a good effort.
I give up quickly.
Yes.
Okay. So that's story number 1. Story number 2, I have shared my office with whoever was running children's ministry at this church for 10 years now. And since the lockdown began, I've been alone in that office because I've been on campus every week since lockdown started. Most people that work at our church don't have to. And then it became a safety thing of, hey, you know what? Let's not have these people coupled together. So a decision was made, Brian, while you were gone, to clear the stuff out of my office for KidMin and move it to a new kid ministry room. And I was very excited about that. There was so much stuff in there from my office mate: DVDs, VHS collections, craft supplies, books, curriculum, game materials. And
the Ark of the Covenant, some manna, there was all kinds of stuff.
before that
left
stuff
over
could be moved out, Ramon, our campus custodian, was in there, and he needed me to point out stuff that stays and stuff that goes. And it was all kind of piled together. My stuff was mixed with KidMin stuff. And he saw this package on the desk. He said, "Hey, what's that?" And I said, "Oh, I don't actually know." I told him a brief version of the story. "You could just go ahead and take that. I don't care. At this point, whoever wanted it doesn't want it anymore." And so the next day, he spent hours and hours just carting stuff in and out of my office. I couldn't believe how much stuff there was.
Wow.
And then I got to reorganize my space. And it
Yay.
was very exciting. And I realized that when my stuff was actually put on shelves, I only occupy about 20% of the shelf space in this office. I have got room to expand, and that's very exciting. And then later that same day, Pastor Tim called me and said I needed to come into the KidMin office. And when I got in there was stuff spread out all over the place, including what looked like some craft supplies, maybe, maybe it was from some Pioneer. What was that activity that the kids used to
Pioneer
do?
clubs?
Pioneer clubs,
Yeah.
some sort of craft thing or some wilderness thing. And they had these bags of dehydrated broccoli on the table that had clearly gone bad. It looked so nasty. And they were looking at me like, "Hey, what do you think about this?" And like, I don't know, like the kid ministry stuff. And the bags were labeled like blue or lime. And I was like, why are you? And they had this look of expectation, like I was supposed to explain. It's like, I don't know. I haven't looked at most of the stuff that was on that shelf. There was cupboards and cabinets full of stuff in that office. And then they showed me that it had come out of the package that had been returned to sender to my house from England.
Wow.
There were 4 bags of marijuana in that package.
Really?
So Ramon cut the thing open, and there's a T-shirt inside wrapped around a parcel. And they're like, oh, T-shirts, we can use these for something. He opened up the T-shirts. There's a tightly wrapped plastic bag with 4 gallon bags of marijuana stuffed into it.
Wow.
And so that...
Wow.
Look what happens when you go away on a trip, Brian.
Ben, my gosh.
I turned into a kingpin of some kind.
Apparently so. People are sending you just a massive amount of drugs.
And this is how naive I am about the ways of the world. Everybody else was in there like, oh man, I know what that smell is. And I'm like, what? Dehydrated broccoli? Is that what dehydrated broccoli smells like? It's clearly gone bad.
Wow. Okay,
I never had that party phase.
That's bizarre.
Yeah.
That is crazy. And the fact that it was sitting in your office all this time and we didn't take advantage of it? I mean, we could have had a very nice party for Pastor Bob's retirement. Ben,
that is not getting cut out.
Holding out on us. Oh, that's awesome. Cheech and Chong there in the kids' office. That's great, Ben.
Yes.
Wow.
And, so apparently the smell lingered for several days. And the Kidmin room that all the stuff got moved to shares a door with the preschool director's office. And so they were very concerned that parents might be coming by to check into the school and just smell that coming through the whole building.
So just so you know, the proceeds from the sale of that leftover product will be funding our kids' ministry now no, I'm just kidding. Of course not.
I don't think it's okay for us to joke about this legally. I don't know.
It's legal in California.
That's a good point. It's not legal to ship it to England from California.
It is not legal. Yes.
I think you need a license.
No wonder you couldn't track it down.
So if you're planning a party, contact Fresh Fits.
Apparently. Yikes.
Bye.
That's awesome.
Main topic.
All right, so I hijacked the main topic this week because, as most of you know, I just did a trip back east. And some of you may know the purpose of that trip was purely rest and recharge and relaxation. The first part of the trip was in North Carolina, where I flew to gather with a group of my high school friends. And yes, I said high school friends because even though I'm very old, I still maintain connection with my high school friends. I know that's weird. And then I journeyed back with one of those high school friends to my home turf in Western Pennsylvania. But what I wanted to talk about was these friendships that I've had in my life since I was a wee lad, and some of them going back to kindergarten. The real friendships really started late elementary school, early high school, junior high, that kind of time. And we were sitting around talking, and I was kind of thinking about the fact that these friendships have been cornerstone in my life in many ways. And we were talking about what makes our friendships different and why they've lasted. And one of the interesting conclusions that came from a non-Christian friend was she described it as empathy-powered relationships. And that's kind of the term she used. And she said that she thinks it's something Brian talked about from the Bible. And I went, yeah, I guess that Brian guy did talk about it from the Bible many, many years ago. And the idea of intentionally building friendships on a biblical model. And so that's kind of what we want to talk about, is the idea of empathy-powered relationships, and specifically these friends that I've had, and then how that's possible and why the Bible talks about that. Because relationships are really important. You know, God said from the very beginning with Adam and Eve, it's not good for us to be alone. And then the Bible is full of the one anothering and all those ways that we're knit together as the body of Christ. Relationships of all types are very important. Friendships are pretty much the one that we don't talk about that much, because we talk about relationships as in marriage and family and all that's very important. But I think friendships are almost as important. And if you're not careful, as you grow older, you get less and less friends because your life gets busier and busier and busier with family and work and marriage and all of the things. But this concept works in all relationships, not just friendships, but all types of relationships. So pause there for a second. And should we talk about the Bible here, Ben? Or
as you like. Should I read the Bible?
So I'm going to go to Romans 12, which is the passage where I think I first came across this idea of intentional friendships, and this idea of empathy-powered relationships shows up in Romans 12, especially 9 through 16. And Paul echoes this teaching in other passages, and I think this is a biblical concept overall. But the idea shows up in this passage where Paul begins by saying love must be genuine, and he talks about how relationships have to be characterized by love, and it has to be genuine love, not just shared affection necessarily, or even a common interests. So it needs to be a little deeper than that. And he's calling us to these kind of relationships that are built on love and a very intentional living out of that love. And he talks about how this is empowered by the Holy Spirit, and then how we can then live together and pray for one another, live in sort of a extending grace situation, ways we can extend hospitality to each other. All that is in verses 9 through 14. What I want Ben to read is verses 15 and 16 of chapter 12.
Be happy with those who are happy, and weep with those who weep. Live in harmony with each other. Don't be too proud to enjoy the company of ordinary people, and don't think you know it all.
Brian is what Ben always likes to add there, which is true. But I think about those verses because when I was in North Carolina with these friends, I was kind of thinking back on the decades that I've been friends with these folks, and we have been at each other's weddings. We have been there for each other through times of joy and celebration. And that's the good part, when you get to celebrate the birth of children or new jobs or relationships and marriages and anniversaries and all that kind of stuff, birthdays. One of these friends was my friend Tom, who flew out to be here with me when I turned 50 back in January. And just throughout the years, we've been there for each other through the good times. And that's the easy part, gathering in North Carolina for fun and going on trips and all that kind of stuff. The hard part is that second part, when you're mourning with each other. And though I'm only 50 years old, I have been through this with not only my own family, with losing my mom, but also with losing one of our good friends. One of that friend group passed away 2 years ago. And we all gathered together to mourn her passing and to walk with her husband as he mourned through that terrible loss. And then months later, we got together in North Carolina and we did a little friend memorial service, essentially. And so we stayed with each other even through that, through her cancer and then through the mourning. And we've been there for each other at those most difficult times of life as well for decades. And as I look back on it, I went, how did that happen? Like, how did that? Because these are people that are more than just friends because we were in the same club in high school or the same classes or the same, affinity groups or whatever. It's more than just social friends. And when I look back, I think it's because starting back then, we all built these intentional friendships where we chose to be in each other's lives in a deeper way, where you're intentionally going deeper and saying, I'm going to not just be around you when you're going through things. I'm going to be with you, and I'm going to walk with you through the good times and the bad. And I'm going to make the effort to do this on a regular basis throughout the years, and be it through, tragedy or through triumph. We're going to be in this together. And that kind of commitment and that kind of intentional choices, it takes a lot of work. And that's what verse 16 talks about, to be in harmony with one another. The idea of harmony, it doesn't just happen. It's something you have to work at. You have to listen to each other. You have to adjust what you're doing to fit what someone else is doing. And it's a very intentional process. And that's what I think this is all about. When you build these kind of deeper relationships, it's an intentional process, be it a marriage, be it friendships, whatever. You're building based on empathy. You're building this relationship where I'm going to be with you and walk with you, and I'm going to be there. I'm not going to have the answers. I'm not going to be able to solve your problems or fix what's going on, but I'm going to be with you whether you're rejoicing or whether you're mourning. I'm going to be there, and I'm going to put myself in your shoes as best I can and just kind of walk through that with you. So that's the model that I think really pays off when you invest yourself in that. But again, it takes a lot of work, takes a lot of effort, and it's not natural for us.
It is a relief the way that it's phrased there. It's not, make sure you're there in the bad times so that you can come up with the right thing to say to solve everything.
Mm-hmm.
It solidifies that idea that your presence in that situation is far more important than what you can do.
And I think that's what we struggle with. We think we can, we think we always have to have the answers, or we think we have to help in some significant way. And a lot of times
we talked about this in our grieving episode.
Yes. A lot of times just being there and letting someone know I'm here, I'm with you, I'm not going anywhere. And whether you need to laugh, cry, scream, yell, cuss, I'm going to be here. And that's the kind of intentional level of empathy that we're called to as Christians with each other, for sure, but even with non-Christians. And some of my friend group, a couple of them are non-Christians still. We're working on that. We're praying on that. But yeah, and so I just had this experience of enjoying the benefits of decades of intentional efforts. And so now I get to kind of, and I still have to make the intentional efforts. Obviously, I can't rest on my laurels, but I think back to when we were in high school and college, and you don't get these kind of lifelong relationships unless you build them with intentionality and a whole lot of love. And that love got us through, this particular situation in 2020. I wasn't sure how this group gathering was going to go because we're all over the map as far as political views of the pandemic.
Wait, Brian, are you implying that we're going through a particularly divisive moment?
I'm kind of
as a
saying
country?
the entire world is polarizing, and I was a little worried that would happen in this friend group too. And so I was actually a little anxious about it, and I was praying about it and kind of, because we are all from all over the country, but we're also all over the map as far as, our jobs and our political beliefs and views of the pandemic, as I said. So, but what was interesting is we had these conversations that were at times intense, but always respectful and always with the understanding that we value each other way more than we value being right or convincing each other or arguing or whatever. So it was great to experience that again of a love-based friendship where you could disagree and not be disagreeable, if that makes sense. So yeah, I don't know. I just had this recent experience, and so I want to be a champion for this. And if you understand what I'm talking about, then great, and please continue to do it. If it's something new to you, study the scriptures, because I think we're called to this level of intentional relationships with each other, especially, but also with non-Christians. And I think this is a real way to make a difference.
We're drawn back to that statement: "What you win them with is what you win them to."
Right.
And we've seen the kind of, in my opinion, shallow soil that can develop from winning a person over through a moving emotional experience at a big church event. But life with Christ is a relationship. And I think one of the real ways to win people to that life with Christ and to not give them a false idea of what it is through relationship.
Yeah, big time. And it really is the most genuine way to win someone is by being their friend and being kind to them and respectful of them and all those things that we know how to do, but we're not very good at doing it. We end up having friends that just share common interests, or we root for the same sports team, or especially men, but I think it applies to women too. We end up with these more shallow relationships based on a hobby or a craft or a common interest.
My kids are the same age as your kids.
Yeah. And I think because we are so busy and so stressed and so overwhelmed, we don't want to take the time to build intentional friendships. I mean, that's a lot of work. But what I guess I'm saying is it's a lot of work that God will help you to do. He'll empower us to do it. And then the benefit is amazing. And so it is a lot of work, but it's worth it. Just like many things in life. If you're going to have something good, sometimes it can take some work to accomplish it. And then it's amazing. But I think this is what Jesus modeled. If you look at the way Jesus relates to people, he's very much putting himself into their shoes. And that's one of the things you notice as he's talking with the woman at the well in John chapter 4, is he's kind of connecting with her on a level that is pretty interesting, because
he gets real really quickly.
Yeah. And he doesn't waste any time with the social niceties, and he doesn't even follow the rules. He shouldn't be talking to her. That's one of the reasons she's so startled that he's talking to her. A Jewish man, especially a rabbi, talking to a Samaritan woman. And he's like, yeah, I'm not going to be bound by those kind of rules of convention or rules of society. I'm going to relate to you as a person, as an individual. I'm going to respectfully talk with you.
And you never get the impression that Jesus was just thinking, okay, this is going to be in the Bible someday. So, this is my project right now. I have to use this person as a visual aid to teach the people that are going to be following me someday. Like, if you look up and down the examples, like the woman who had been bleeding, he got down to her level. He spoke to her using familial terms. Zacchaeus, he doesn't just say, you need to change your life. He says, I'm going to go over to your house and eat lunch today.
Yeah.
When the disciples see him from the shore and they arrive back on shore after the resurrection, he's sitting there with fish frying on the grill.
Yeah.
Like, this is a guy that he didn't treat people like they were projects or like they were a means to an end. And to your point, I think it's important that when we are ministering to people, especially to our relationships with non-believers, that they not feel like a project, because people are very suspicious of Christians in the 21st century.
Yes.
I think we are very much past the pamphlet and power bracelet era of ministry. And it's that classic thing, people don't care what you know until they know that you care.
Exactly.
And I used enough what do you call them, cliches today?
They're cliches because they're true. And so something that's said over and over again becomes a cliche, but that's very true. And what the examples Ben gave are perfect, because if you watch the way Jesus interacts, he's constantly putting himself intentionally in a place to go to sort of put himself in someone's place, to meet their needs, to connect with them on their level. And he's not trying to call them up to his level, obviously. And he's treating them like people, not projects. That's key, because he's relating to them and he's connecting with them, and he's that's empathy. He's willing to go where they where they need him to be, then he challenges and brings them up, of course, but he first meets them where they are. And that's essential in relationships. And to accept someone the way they are, to love them enough to not want them to stay like that is the second part. But you got to start with first meeting someone where they are. And Jesus models that very well. And he also models the intentional pursuit. He doesn't just, friendships or acquaintances or relationships don't just fall out of the sky and happen. You actually have to put some effort into it. Jesus does that. He regularly is talking with people, seeking people out, and in his way, connecting with them in a pretty significant fashion.
Brian, what you described, I think, is a wonderful end game. Many of us will be playing catch up with that. You've spent 35, developing these friendships and relationships. What if you're catching up and you happen to be, I don't know, age 38, and saying, I want this in my life too?
So you start with one, and you don't try to be a relational freak like that Brian guy, because I understand I'm probably on the far end of the extrovert spectrum when it comes to this, I guess. But I think it starts with one. You identify someone in your life that you intentionally want to invest, and you want to be the goal is you want to be the kind of friend you'd like to have, as weird as that sounds. And you try to intentionally make the efforts to communicate, to get to know someone, to let them know that they're important, to study them, to sort of learn them. And we apply this really well in marriage. I mean, if you have a good marriage, a godly marriage, you've learned to kind of study your partner and learn your partner and learn your spouse, and you love them by sort of meeting them and meeting their needs. And we do this fairly well in Christian marriages, but we don't do it when it comes to friendships. And I think it's because we don't understand that the same principles will work really well. Intentional choices and that kind of empathy-powered relationships, that's going to work really well in friendships. And but so I would just start with one. Try to pray about it and identify one person in your life. And maybe it's a family member. I'm not saying it has to be just a total stranger. Maybe there's a family member, or maybe there's a neighbor, or someone who's a friend that's kind of on the hobby level, acquaintance level, shared interest level that you could take a little deeper. And it may be someone that's been in your life for a long time, as you know, sometimes that happens. Friendships can grow and deepen as well. So I would just encourage people to just if you want this kind of benefit, it just starts with one, and don't try to be the freak that tries to do this with 10 people, and understand it's going to take effort, and you got to prioritize that. And it's not going to happen if you just allow yourself to go back into lethargic, apathy. That's not going to work. So that's probably not the answer you wanted to hear, Ben, and study the Bible. Romans 12 makes it pretty clear that God empowers this, that when you serve the Lord and love the Lord God, then it's a lot easier to love the people that he may bring into your life. And sometimes it's just one, and that's where it starts.
This takes time, and this takes an investment of energy, because these relationships that you've been talking about have taken priority in your life for a long time. You make plans every year to go back and spend time with these people. Yeah. And your relationship is built on that. You can't be there for that person in their darkest hour if you're not there occasionally other times too.
Right. And that's a key factor, is it's you make the effort in good times and bad, and you build, even though I've lived across the country for 25 years, I've been away from Pennsylvania. And so some of these folks still live in Pennsylvania. The rest have scattered to the winds like me, but we make the effort through email, through phone calls. And once a year, we're trying to get together, whether that's just sort of a dinner over Thanksgiving. We've done that a couple of times, or whether it's actually a vacation together. We've made it a priority financially, and with our spouses and all of that, we've made it work. But it takes that kind of priority. But again, you start at a simpler level. Just take one step.
I love that.
Start with one.
You said I wouldn't be happy with that advice. I think that's fantastic. Start with one.
Right. And understand it. It's just something you have to put the effort into, and God will empower that effort, but you have to do your part. And a lot of times, what I've learned is if you kind of focus on being the friend you'd like to have, as weird as that sounds, that's huge, because then people respond in a way that's pretty encouraging.
One last word before we go.
It's a pleasure having you back, Brian.
Well, thank you. Yes. So thank you for joining us, and closing remarks here. We want to hear from you, so email us if you can, centenary1911@gmail.com.
We've got those trivia questions going out for you. Remember, we're looking for candy donations and volunteers for October 31st. We're looking for your presence to sing songs with us, the hymn sing, on October 25th. Brian already told you the email address. We love you. Peace.
Bye for now.
With your